Most kitchens are just set up wrong. They're not messy, they're not cluttered, they're just wrong for how we actually use them. That's why cooking feels harder than it actually should be. We're walking back and forth, looking for things, stopping halfway through because something's not where we thought it was, or where it even should be. I used to think that was just part of cooking. And after years of working in manufacturing, I realized something really important. And that is, we wouldn't accept that in the workplace. Not redesigning the kitchen so it's like a workstation or a commercial kitchen. It's still got to be home. Just paying attention to what I was using and making small adjustments as I went. I ended up setting it up so it's a simple workstation when I needed to cook. And everything just got easier after that. The very first thing I changed was how I grouped things. Instead of storing all the things based on what they are, like a can or a jar, I started grouping them by use. I got a herb and spice tray for when I'm making dry mixes, a Mexican tray for when I'm making burritos and tacos, which is pretty much the family's favorite dish. A baking tray when my daughter is baking. Everything for that task is already together. So instead of going backwards and forwards to the cupboard, I just bring the tray out and start cooking. Before this, I didn't notice how many little trips I was making. One spice, then another, then something else. Now it's one movement. Pick up the tray, use the stuff in the tray, and put it back. As simple as that. Now, the next thing I noticed was how much I was moving around the kitchen when I was cooking. Not because I needed to, just because that was where the things were. So I stopped moving around the kitchen and I started keeping the work just in one place. If I'm doing some sort of baking, I'll set up near the cutlery drawer. Well, that's because that's where the measuring cups and the measuring spoons are, or the utensils are. If I'm mixing one of my dry mixes, I work closer to the pantry and bring the measuring cups to me. It's not something you think about at first, but once you notice it, you realize how many extra steps you're making, which is alright if you're low on your step counts, but when you're trying to get the meal cooked for the family, it's not that great. So after this change, my kitchen just is smoother. Then I started looking at where things actually lived in my kitchen. Not just where they fit, but how often I actually use them. The top drawer, measuring spoons, use all the time. Second drawer, utensils, I use them pretty regularly too. Third drawer, other wraps and cloths, not so much, still use them. And the bottom are the pots. I might grab one out once when I'm cooking, but that's about it. So the most used items are the easiest to reach. The less used items are further away. What I realize is that most kitchens are set up once and never adjusted. Even when they don't quite work, I just start moving things based on use. Not all at once, just when something feels slightly off, and over time it settled into something that made a lot more sense. Something I didn't expect to matter that much was the weight of things. Under the sink, I got the pressure cooker and a mixer, both on the upper shelf. Not because they're used more, but because they're heavy and easiest to lift from that position. Below that are the lighter things: blender, food processor, baking trays, bento boxes. Before, I didn't think about it at all. But once you notice how you're lifting things, it's hard to ignore. It's not about being organized. It's not about making the space easier to use. It's about looking after yourself. And this is probably the biggest shift. It's not really about organization. It's about the flow. How easy you move through your space. How often you stop. How often do you have to think? How many small interruptions are there? Before, cooking felt like a series of little tasks. Now, it feels more like one continuous thing. I don't need a better kitchen. I don't even need more space. I just needed it to work for me. And that comes from small adjustments. Paying attention, trying something, keeping with what works, and change what doesn't work. Nothing's perfect. It just gets better.